Hey there, this is Andrew, and I am bringing you a Winds of Exchange deck review. And this is actually going to be probably the next series of deck reviews that I do are going to be on uh, some decks that we opened to play in local sealed in person. So, just a quick background on the circumstances, I guess. I managed to really thanks to help from friends in the Ancient Bear Republic team, both lending me pieces for my uh, Alliance standard deck and helping Theorycraft. I was able to make top four there in KeyForge Celebration, and at KeyForge Celebration, we each got two decks for showing up. Um, they opened it up to buy more, and you could get them as prizes. Anyway, in the end, I had enough decks available coming home from there to to do a local sealed play, and so folks in my store got together, and we actually had 10 people. So 8 of the decks were from my stash, and then 2 were from Flaming Hobo, Devin. And so, uh, yeah, the deal though was I got to keep the decks. I wasn't, giving them away, which maybe it's a little selfish on my part, but I just felt like, hey, for now, these are pretty hard to come by. I kind of want to have the option to keep them. I did let my daughter pay me ahead of time for hers before she opened it, and it worked out great for her because she ended up winning the event. So she went 4-0, and maybe at some point I'll get her on here to go over her deck with me. But for now, I'm going to go over some of the other decks. And with mine, I know what's in it, so I put the cards in order as as they are on the list. But with the other ones, I'm just going to go through them as they're all shuffled up and find what they are, because I saw some of them, but actually haven't seen all of them, so it'll be a little more of a those will be a little more of a surprise reveal. But I played like 6 games with this deck at this point, and this deck that I'm going to start with. Mine, I went 3-1 with. I only lost to Allie, and this deck seems good. So we'll go over that, and then, like I said, in the coming weeks, I'll plan to put up reviews of the other decks. So okay, so this is de Berville, the Artisan of Defeat, and it has Brobnar, Equidon, and Unfathomable. And I actually, on the way, maybe it was on the way there, I was talking to Ali and saying, I think that it might be the case that these are the 3 best houses in the set. They're certainly all pretty good. So, all right. And the token creature that I got was Grumpus. Grumpus is a 2-power beast with splash attack 1. And this worked out well. I mean, this is a pretty good creature. I think Skirmisher might be better, but there's some good options with Grumpus, and I definitely think Berserker is better. But oh well, Grumpus is still pretty cool. So okay, let's get into it. So we'll start with Brobnar. And this is the only rare I got in Brobnar here, Endless Hordes. Endless Hordes is a really good card. It is an action that says play for each enemy creature, make a token creature, ready it, and have it fight that enemy creature, ignoring taunt. Resolve these fights one at a time. And if you get this with one of the Brobnar tokens, it's going to be, a pretty much a one-sided board wipe, because, Grumpus, you have the splash attack going on, skirmishers, you have skirmish, so you're doing damage, but you're going to be left with your token creatures at the end. There's there's a Brobnar creature that gives all your creatures splash attack 1, so you could have Grumpuses with splash attack 2 or skirmishers with splash attack 1. Berserkers are just going to wipe anything. So it's pretty impressive what this does, and it really is one sided. Now the one issue you could run into is tokens are affected by the rule of 6. So if you have, if your opponent has 8 creatures on the board, you're going to make 8 tokens, but you're only going to be able to use 6 of them. The rest will fail. So that's just worth noting. That's a little weird. It actually would make sense to me if a card like this said ignoring rule of 6, because that seems more in the spirit of it. But anyway, as it is, rule of 6 would limit this. But it's very good. Okay, let me move myself out of the way. Then we have Earthshaker. Earthshaker is an old card. It's a 7-power giant that says play, destroy each creature with power 3 or lower. That seems fine. One important thing to note, though, is Earthshaker will kill all the tokens. So I feel like that's another reason the bigger Brobnar tokens, Warrior and Berserker, are a little more desirable, is that Earthshaker won't kill them. Obviously, you're not going to get Earthshaker in every deck, but it is nice if Earthshaker doesn't kill your own tokens. Now, you can imagine either of these cards, Endless Hordes or Earthshaker, with a token like Prospector, where if I'm remembering right, that's the Star Alliance one that's destroyed, draw 1, and suddenly you have a draw engine in Brobnar. But anyway, yeah, so Earthshaker, in one game I actually ended up discarding the Earthshaker because I had so many Grumpuses out. Alright, then we have Feat of Strength. This is an action with an amber that says play for the remainder of the turn. Each time an enemy creature is destroyed in a fight, make a token creature. This is real good because this helps, okay, you're fighting, you're losing stuff, but you are refilling your board with tokens. So that is very nice. Gedhammer, very cool here. A 5-power giant Brocken, so a band member, that says destroyed, ready, and enrage each other friendly Brobnar creature. Yeah, that's strong, and especially, we have some other big Brobnar creatures that can be used to do board control, but also this can suddenly give you a reap engine, because even though you are enraging the Brobnar creatures, there's a decent chance that by the time you're smashing Gedhammer into something, there's not a lot of your opponent's board left, and so that now enraged creatures could actually reap. So one of the questions becomes, how can I use this on the turn I play it? Because it is actually a little bit of a liability to leave out. Because if your opponent destroys it on their turn, your Brobnar creatures become ready, which they already were, and get enraged, which is worse. So you really want to have a way to destroy this on the turn you play it. And luckily, there are some ways. There are at least, I think there are 3 ways in this deck. So I'll go over. I'll call each of them out as they come. Okay, Shattered Throne is back. I love this card. It's an artifact with an amber. It's a location, and it says after a creature is used to fight, it captures 1. That's awesome. Again, probably even better with like Skirmisher, because the Grumpuses end up getting killed, but still very good. And there's plenty of other stuff in here that can fight. Okay, Fresh Marks is real good. This is an action with an amber. It says play, destroy a friendly creature. If you do, exalt 3 enemy creatures. So the interesting thing here is, if you have this with an empty board, it's just get an amber. Okay, that's fine. You're deciding your turn order. So oftentimes if you're going into a Brobnar turn, your opponent will have some creatures. And so Fresh Marks can be useful that way. Because you get to use it and then fight. And in fact, it pairs well with Gedhammer. I hadn't even realized this before. I never used this combo, but I could certainly imagine a situation where you reap with your Brobnar and then play the Fresh Marks, destroying the Gedhammer, exalting 3 enemy creatures, readying and enraging all your Brobnar, and then you go fight to get that amber. So, and if you think about it, at the end of the day, compared to similar cards like Carpe Winum and Blood Money, this is giving you 4 amber in the end. Whereas Carpe Winum only gives you 2, Blood Money only gives you 2. Blood Money's slightly better because your opponent only has to have one creature for it to work. But at the end of the day, this has a max value of 4. If your opponent has one creature, it's giving you 2 at the cost of one of your creatures again. But still, I think it's pretty good. So I think this is a fantastic card. Fresh marks. Okay. Then you have Jarl Svend, who's a 7-power giant that says, and that's big. 7 power is pretty big. After an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Jarl Svend, make a token creature. And then in parentheses, Jarl Svend must survive the fight. Yeah, that's not surprising. So after an enemy creature is destroyed fighting Jarl Svend, make a token creature. Yeah, that's really nice. So you can sometimes ready it with the Ged Hammer. Against enemy token creatures, you could get several fights out of this, getting good value. But even if you just, swing into a 5, which I did many times, taking out a Mix the Tall-Minded or a Mesmerist, you swing into this, you make a token creature, you still have this big 7 on the board. It's a pretty good deal. Okay, so we covered one way to kill the Ged on the turn it's played. Here's another way, Might Club. It's an artifact and weapon. It has action, ready, and enrage a creature. This fills a similar role to Gauntlet of Command, but it does not enable house cheating. You're readying and enraging a creature, so as long as you have a Brobnar creature, this is fine, right? You ready it, you can fight with it. You can't reap with it if there's an enemy creature, but if there isn't an enemy creature, go ahead. But yeah, it is slightly, I would say it's slightly worse than Gauntlet of Command because it does not enable cross-house use. And in the case where your opponent has no board, yeah, you can ready and you get to reap, but then the creature's left enraged. Which in the case of a Brobnar creature is probably fine, but it just constrains you actually a little more. So I think this is strictly worse than Gauntlet of Command, actually. Okay, then we have Pelf. This is a 3-power goblin with Skirmish that says after fight, your opponent loses 1 amber. It has a capture icon from another card. Interestingly, I don't think Brobnar historically has a ton of Skirmish. So it's actually, this is really nice. It works great with that Shattered Throne, and you get to choose the order, right? So you can make them lose 1, and then you capture 1. So if they only had 1, you make them lose and fail to capture, which is probably better. Yeah, this is a really nice card. I like it. I like Pelf. And that's a common. Then we have 2 copies of Pound. Pound is back from Age of Ascension. It's an action with an amber that says play, deal 2 damage to a creature with 1 splash. That's really solid. Nice board control there. And then we have Shock Herder, a 3-power goblin with deploy and play, ready, and fight with a neighboring creature. So it's a slightly larger Grey Rider essentially, but it doesn't have that reap ability. But still very nice in Brobnar, and a little bit of an improvement over Ganger Chieftain in my opinion because of that deploy, even though it gets downgraded on the power a little bit. And so this is another way to kill the Ged Hammer on the same turn in which you played it, play it, and then Shock Herder it into something where they trade, and then you ready all your other Brobnar creatures, including Shock Herder. So that can be quite a good deal. And this does enable house cheating. You can use an out-of-house creature with this. Okay, that's a pretty good Brobnar. Now, like, I don't have a Brick Nasty in here. There's some things that could make it better, but I still really like it. It's very active and really helps build that token board. Okay, on to Equidon. We'll start with this card that I don't feel great about, the Amber Road. I never had this win me a game, I'll put it that way. So it's an artifact, it's a location, and it has Omni, put 1 trade counter on the Amber Road, then gain 1 amber for each trade counter on it, give control of the Amber Road to your opponent. So this is really interesting because obviously the first time you use it, you gain an amber, that's fine. And then you're giving it to your opponent. It's going to stay exhausted at the end of your turn because it's now under your opponent's control. And what that means is they're not going to be able to use it for a turn. It'll skip turns. It's essentially every 3 turns it can be used, right? I use it on let's say I use it on turn 3, then you can't use it on turn 4. It readies though. Then on my turn 5, or I don't have it, and then on your turn 6 you use it. So it's every 3 turns a player can use it, and it's alternating players, and the number is going up every time. And anyway, I guess if you have Amber Control, this could be really good. I don't have a lot of Amber Control in this deck, and so this ended up not being as good. Shattered Throne was really my option. So I think the first game I played last night, I ended up using this like once, and I won. Then we like played again for fun, and I got it out earlier and lost partially because of it. So yeah, kind of a card to be careful with. Okay, Outposts seem all good. And Equidgy Outpost is no exception to that. This is an artifact with an amber. It's a location, and it has action. Put a friendly creature on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you do, draw 3 cards. That's super good. A couple of reasons why Outposts are good, and I think probably end up talking about this more in depth at some point, but there's a couple interesting things that are going on. One is because you can target token creatures. If you're putting if you can put a token creature on the bottom of your deck, it means that you're a little safer against. Okay, here's a really high impact action. Let's say that came out. I can tuck it under the deck with the Outpost, and now I'll get access to it later. Versus it just being used as a token creature and going to the discard pile. Yeah, so that can be really useful. In addition to that, there's I guess a second layer you can go into where you're shaping the bottom of your deck. If you're constantly putting, just like you would want to put cards from the same house in your archives if you can help it, so that you aren't tempted to take your archives on other turns, but then when you go into that house, you can kind of have a super turn. With the Outposts, you can tuck cards from the same house on the bottom of your deck, so that when you get to the bottom of the deck, you can kind of have a super turn from what you drew there. Also, just having the knowledge of it can be really good. Okay, so this one, so all the Outposts say action, put a friendly creature on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you do, comma, and then effect. And the effect for Equidgy Outpost is draw 3 cards, which is good. 3 cards is enough that you're likely to get a card that you can use. Okay, then we have Nifflepaw. It's an upgrade with an amber that gives a creature after Reap, destroy this creature and attach Nifflepaw to another creature. That's a fun one. In my experience, it mostly ends up creatures get used to fight and it gets discarded, but it's still kind of a fun effect there. Then we have Out Negotiate. This is an action with an amber. This has been worse in experience than in theory for me, but maybe I just need to play it more. And maybe it'll be better out of set. Anyway, it's an action with an amber. When you play it, you choose a card in your opponent's discard pile. Steal 1 amber equal to the number of bonus icons. Steal amber equal to the number of bonus icons on that card, and put that card on the bottom of its owner's deck. The problem is that most of the time this is steal 1, put a card on the bottom of the owner's deck. So you're so you end up stealing 1, putting a card on the bottom, and you're probably just trying to pick a not very good card to give them later. So there's a little bit of nuance there, but not enough for it to be really good. Obviously, against a fertility chant, this could be amazing, but in this case, yeah, it just hasn't seemed that good. Okay, Trade Secrets is an action. When you play it, you discard any number of Equidon cards from your hand. Steal 1 amber for each card discarded this way. I had one turn where I discarded Out Negotiate because I'm thinking, okay, I'm turning it from gain amber, steal 1, put 1 on the bottom of the deck to just steal 1. So I get less, but my opponent doesn't get that card back. And discarded the Amber Road that way too, and I was pretty happy. But overall, this doesn't seem great unless you can get good draw. If you're getting good draw, this is amazing. And in this deck, I had okay draw. but not amazing. And obviously, because of the Equidgy Outpost being the draw engine, it's not like building up to a great Equidon turn. It's only what I get during the Equidon turn. Okay, then we have the Belligerent Guard. Belligerent Guard is an 8-power giant that enters play ready, and after you play it, your opponent draws a card. It's really fun and feels good for both players. I think Equidon in general really feels good for both players, because even when you're doing great things on your turn, your opponent is often getting something in return, and it makes the game feel more fun and exciting, which I think is great design. And I have 4 Belligerent Guards in this deck. That's a lot. And these are huge bodies. I mean, like, these are the biggest creatures in the deck. There are bigger creatures in other houses, but in this deck, these are the biggest creatures. Okay, so then we have Forced Retirement. It's an action. When you play it, you destroy a creature, and if you do, its controller gains 1 amber. Yeah, this is very versatile. Can do what you need when you need it. Sometimes you destroy something to gain an amber. Sometimes you're blowing up your opponent's stuff because it's important enough to let them have an amber. Okay, next we have Mass Buyout. This is an action that says play, destroy each creature. Each player gains amber equal to half the number of creatures they control that were destroyed this way, rounded up. This is a really nice board clear. Yeah, it's giving your opponent a benefit potentially, but it also could give you a benefit. I think this is going to be amazingly good in decks that have, tokens with good destroyed effects, which this isn't. But it's still a fun card and a good way to keep that board under control. Okay, and sometimes if you have some amber control in Equidon, this can be a way to give your opponent some amber that you're then going to steal. Okay, Trading Frenzy is an action with an amber. When you play it, a friendly creature and an enemy creature each capture 3 from their opponent. I found that with the Belligerent Guards, and those are actually my only Equidon creatures in this deck. I didn't realize that. That's kind of fun. But I realized with the Belligerent Guards, I could often Trading Frenzy, capture 3 on one of my big 8-power creatures that I'm going to reap with, and put 3 on an opponent's creature that I'm just going to immediately destroy. So it worked out really nicely. Effectively, it's get an amber, capture 3 at that point. Okay, on to Unfathomable. So I'll start. Offering to Killigog seems really interesting. It's an artifact. It's a power. This one got a capture icon on it. So it has 2 Omni abilities, and you can only use 1 per turn. But they're kind of interesting. So the top one is Omni, destroy a friendly creature. If you do, choose a creature in your discard pile, place it face down under offering to Killigog. And first off, this is a way to destroy Gedhammer in your turn, because that's an Omni ability. If you have the offering to Killigog down already in your Brobnar turn, you can play Gedhammer and immediately pop it with the offering. And there's another creature. There's a Camelani coming later in Unfathomable. So that worked out well. Having that be an Omni ability. And then, so if you do destroy a friendly creature, you choose a creature in your discard pile and place it face down under offering to Killigog. And then the second Omni ability is put each card under offering to Killigog into play face down as a token creature. So, okay, a couple things you can do here. One is you can thin out creatures from your deck if you want to just store them under here and kind of lean harder into action play. And actually, this would be this is really good tech, I think, against like a Quixelstone, because you're thinning out your deck. Now, the second ability is Omni, put each card under offering to Killigog into play face down as a token creature. And that's actually also good anti-Quixel tech, because Quixel can't stop you from putting cards into play. It only stops you from playing creatures. So now that also, so that could either give you a big board all of a sudden for the purpose of having a big board, or it could give you a big board for the purpose of firing a mass buyout or something like that, or right before you bring out Get Hammer and you just want some tokens to use, or there's a lot of options there. I think with a better token creature, this would be even better. Um, a lot of times what I found myself doing is kind of like feeding the offering, and then when my opponent got ahead on board and I was low on board, use it to get creatures back out and maybe every 2 turns I'm just putting 2 tokens out, and so that ended up feeling not so great. Sometimes I was using the second Omni ability to put a couple tokens out to feed the outposts. And I have 2 outposts coming here in addition to the one that I already showed you from Equidon. So um, anyway, but it seems a very flexible setup, and so I really like offering to Killigog. Okay, let's look at. So I have 2 copies of this one, Azure Base and Outpost. It's an artifact. It's a location. It comes with an Amber Pip, and it says action: put a friendly creature on the bottom of its owner's deck. If you do, exhaust 3 enemy creatures. This ended up being really good. That's actually pretty powerful. And again, because you have control over what you're putting under the deck, you can get extra value out of it by playing this well. You have, again, a card that you came out as a token, but you want to play it as itself. Tuck it under, exhaust 3 enemy creatures. You have a card with a good play effect. Tuck it under, you know. So there's really nice utility to these outposts. And again, I don't think I've seen any of them so far that I thought, oh, that's not good. They all seem good. The Equidon and Unfathomable ones both seem great. The Brobnar one is deal 6 damage to a creature, and that seems less powerful. So yeah, the effect, if you do put a friendly creature on the bottom of its owner's deck for Azure Base and Outpost, is exhaust 3 enemy creatures, which again is pretty good. Really good with Sleep with the Fishes. Sleep with the Fishes is an action with an Amber that says play, destroy each exhausted creature. I had a turn last night where I used both Azure Base and Outposts to exhaust 6 of my opponent's creatures. One was already exhausted from under pressure, and there's a Thunder Toe in here also, so I was able to exhaust the last one, and then Sleep with the Fishes completely wiped their board. That was pretty cool. Here's Thunder Toe. It's an action with an Amber that says play, exhaust 2 creatures, deal 2 damage to each exhausted creature. Then we have Under Pressure. It's an upgrade with an Amber that says this creature cannot ready. Really good when you have abilities to exhaust the enemy creatures, so that it effectively becomes this creature can't ever do anything, ever. Bubbles is a 5-power Aquan with play, put an enemy creature on top of its owner's deck. That's a really nice ability, especially if a creature has gotten upgrades that you're upset about, destroyed effects that you don't like. Use the bubbles and make it stay away for a while. Okay. Really good Unfathomable cards here. Abyssal Sight, 2 copies of this. It's an action with an Amber, and when you play it, you destroy a friendly creature. If you do, look at your opponent's hand and choose a card from it. That player discards that card. Often, I could use this on a token creature that I wasn't too worried about, or again, that Camelani's coming in a second. Use this on the Camelani, and you actually come out 2 creatures ahead. And getting to look at your opponent's hand and discard a card. I'll just keep in mind that used to be, anyway, I think it still is, the penalty in organized play for overdrawing and looking at your hand is this effect. That's a punishment for cheating, not always intentional cheating, but for cheating. And Abyssal Sight just lets me do it when you haven't cheated. That's pretty strong. Okay, then we have Fathom Reaver. It's a 4-power Aquan that says play, make a token creature, and while you control a token creature, your opponent refills their hand to 1 less card during the draw card step. So like a Succubus, a little bigger, and it has that play, make a token creature ability. Seems good, and if you're able to keep tokens on the board, then it really is as good as a Succubus or Streak or Fuguru or whatever. Then we have Gilt Spine Netcaster, a 2-power Aquan that's where the capture enhancements came from, and it says after reap, exhaust a creature. And lastly, we have Camelani, a 4-power Aquan with destroyed, make 2 token creatures. And again, this is really nice when you have abilities that want to destroy a creature, and now suddenly you're turning it into a benefit. So looking at this deck really quick, I think one thing I'm just now noticing, there's not a ton of creatures. There's four here, so 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 is not a high creature count. Now, of course, with tokens, I never felt like I was struggling to have a board. But that frees up a lot of the rest of the deck to be actions and artifacts. There are a lot of artifacts in here. Couple upgrades. So I tend to like low creature count decks. I really enjoy big board, but I think low creature count decks tend to be very resilient against a lot of ways that opponents can come at you, and especially having a low creature count but really good board control, because the creatures that are in here are big mostly. I feel like there's a lot of pips here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 printed amber is kind of a lot. That's not bad. And then having some good control options. Now, would I like to have a befuddled or two? Definitely. But still, there are really good control options in here. Some draw, and yeah, I think this is not going to be. I think this is a solid deck, but I don't think decks like this are going to be atypical for Winds of Exchange. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff like this. At the end of the day, Grumpus was fun. I think there are better options, and I wish, sometimes I think there are going to be a lot of decks that are great, but you just wish you could have a better token. And that might be one of the really fun things about Alliance, that you can bring in the token that would, you swap out one house and suddenly you have the token you wanted, and a much more powerful deck. I expect there to be a lot of that in Winds of Exchange. Anyway, this was fun to play. Like I said, I went 3-1 with it. Lost to my daughter. Hard to complain about that. And had a lot of fun. This was again day Berville, the Artisan of Defeat, and I'll be showing you some of the other decks that we opened along the way over the next few videos. I hope you enjoyed and that you'll keep watching and that you'll get out there and forge some keys.